I'm Milo Denison.
And I'm Kev Bamboo, and this is Rip It Up.
Rip It Up is a topical show about life impacting creators around the world today.
Yeah, and on tonight's show, we're joined by financial literacy advocate Marvin D from Paper Street Projects. We'll be discussing the topic of facing racism, how digital assets can enhance, and more. Once again, hello to those viewing on our unedited stream on Instagram Live. But before we get into the show, Milo, you're going to be starring as Buttons, aren't you, in an adults-only production of Cinderella? Is that correct?
Well, first, I just want to say, I don't get why everybody rips on Buttons like he's a bad character. He's like in almost the whole play. He has more dialogue, I think, than anybody else. But no, I am not starring as Buttons. As you can see by this handsome, rugged jawline, I will be playing Prince Charming.
Oh, yeah, naturally, man. Naturally, yeah. So when's the show?
It will be opening at the end of March, the Wednesday, whatever the last Wednesday in March is. And it will be at the Criminy. They're going to be so mad that I can't remember the name of the theater.
Look at that. He doesn't even know when he's performing, and two, where it's at. So I don't know. I don't have to believe you now.
Yeah. End of March at the...
Is
Give me a second, guys. Yeah, I'm looking it up, actually.
Brilliant. I love that.
So it's at the Brookside Theater, and it will be opening March 30th.
Excellent. Well, good luck to you. Break a leg and all that.
All right, let's stop talking about that nonsense and welcome our guest to tonight's show. So thanks for joining us, Marvin.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with simply tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into crypto.
Okay, so I am from New York, and not much to say. I've been in sales, most of my life, so I've been always a people person, and I just kind of know how to connect with people, and try to, if they don't understand a certain topic or just need questions, I kind of would just like to. I'm really good at breaking things down. And break it down in layman's term where they can understand it. And I just have a knack for that. And I have a knack for, reading people and helping people. So that's where the, financial literacy, comes into play and just helping everyone. And how I got started into crypto specifically, it was about, 2017, a friend of mine who I worked with, he says, have you heard of Bitcoin? I'm like, no, I haven't heard of Bitcoin. I thought it was a video game initially, because you hear the word bit and it's just like, okay, it's like a video game, Bitcoin. He goes, no, all you got to do is, you put your money in and it goes up. And it just, to me, it just sounded really, irrational. I couldn't compute that. He goes, yeah, you throw $100 in and you'll just make a lot of money. And it was just like, okay, well, that doesn't sound right or true.
That sounds a little too good to be true, almost.
Right?
Purpose,
yeah, exactly. And it was coming from a friend of mine who I like to think he's a pretty rational person too. I mean, he's in sales, so for him to tell me that, I was like, okay, well, you know what? Let's try it out. This wasn't like towards the beginning of 2017, so I didn't put much in, right? And I mean, because I was a little skeptical, and it had a little bit of a run towards the end of the year, and then that's when kind of everything just kind of started pumping. Right, everybody gets all euphoric and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of got introduced to crypto assets, and going down the proverbial rabbit hole of crypto and the banking system and the financial system and stuff like that.
And did you find kind of at that stage, your life kind of changed a little bit, as in the dynamic of your life probably changed a little bit because you now invested in cryptocurrency?
100%. Right. Yeah. It definitely changed my whole perspective on things, especially the concept of money. It kind of changed everything for me. And from then on, I couldn't thank him enough. My friend who up until now has just kind of fell off the game, I guess. He wasn't really, because number didn't go up anymore for him. Right. So that's just everybody else. There's a couple of tourists and then I just kind of stayed. But yeah, that was like the pivotal point for me in terms of financial literacy and stuff like that. Just trying to learn more.
So obviously, you got into crypto, and as many people know that have ever kind of like dipped their toes into it, can be quite a hostile place, as well as quite a friendly place amongst different communities on
Right.
there. So did you kind of, and especially some of the larger ones as well, the really big, not really companies, but really big communities that are all out there and incredibly kind of like maxing out on whatever they're supporting. Do you find that kind of more people showed some of their true colours as like the political landscape changed as well?
I feel like they do. I feel like they have. I noticed that certain crypto enthusiasts had they were aligned with certain parties. When their party is not no longer in behind the oval chair, I guess they get a little upset and kind of they're just not enthusiastic anymore because they thought certain things were going to happen, or certain events that would lead up to an explosion in crypto. That's where the greed factor comes in. And then there's people who are on the other side who were just they were more of how would you say kind of just like putting it in their face, right? That the other side wasn't really the other side lost or whatever. So I do see a little bit of that. It's a shame, right? It's just a shame to have that kind of divisiveness when we all share the same common goal, and that's for financial freedom. Just being more in tune with the system, right? So and I myself am a registered independent. So I just kind of stay away from the left or right, because when it comes down to it, no one's going to grab you by the hand and walk you to financial freedom, right? Nobody's going to say, oh, okay, let's take care of this. Let's take care of them, because they're feeling the brunt of the irresponsible financial and monetary policies that they've been passing for the past 2 years. So, yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how pretty much everything is divisive in some way. Like there is literally nothing that people will not argue about. So it's crazy. Right. And something like this, you're like, well, everybody wants to actually make money. Nobody wants to like not have any. So it's kind of like, so here's another method. Here's the new way of doing it. And some people are like, what? I don't understand. That's terrible.
Right.
Yeah. I suppose it can be, because it can be quite intimidating. Anything new to anyone, unless you're really young and got no fears at all, you kind of, everything's a little bit intimidating to people. And obviously something like a new type of currency or a new way of using currency as well can be, I know people like in the UK, they changed their currency system in like the mid 70s. And of course they'd had that same system since, they were putting stones into a wall, kind of thing, and say, just a natural exchange of this for this. And they changed up the whole currency system, and it went from the kind of decimal to imperial to decimal. That's the way. And so many people, even today, still say, like people like my parents' age, they still say, I don't know why they messed around with it. It should have gone back to the like 126.5p that was worth a pound. So it's like, no, because it was done to simplify, that and round the system that was more in line with the rest of the world. But yeah, it's still people. I suppose people don't like change that much, I imagine, and especially if they're incredibly settled into certain ways that they don't think there's anything wrong with. So talking of that, if we bring that kind of to present day, when you kind of start getting more involved in like cryptocurrency and digital assets, obviously there was, Twitter's quite a big place for crypto in terms of discussing things, or at least one of the initial gateways into talking about that. But wasn't there kind of like a lot of weird stuff going off? Like you'd get people creating like kind of like these like long-term like memes that just became almost like a cult figure and things like that.
Yeah, Well, yeah, the cults. Yeah, it's almost like a religion. It feels like with the current with with their currency of choice, their own little small community. Hey, you're asking maybe for like an example of that, or like have I seen like on crypto Twitter? I call it crypto Twitter. It's really
Yeah, I suppose I was thinking more. I saw something that was like kind of like this. It was just literally like a meme that went around all the time in one of the communities. And I think it was a bear, and then all these people were just kind of like, it was full of, supposedly so anyway. It was full of all these riddles and things.
right.
Yeah, essentially. I don't know if you know more about that. Then yeah, tell us more about that, because it's just interesting in the whole. It's kind of like not cult as such, but kind of following something and blindly almost believing certain things.
Yeah, that's the bearable guy. That was the original Riddler for the XRP community. It was interesting, right? His first, his first riddle, I think, which gone mainstream, I guess, was the castle one, where it was it was just a regular castle with a bear and a jester's mask, and a hand coming out, which looked like it was holding like a little puppet, and a king with no mouth. That was like one of the first ones, and he or she or they that entity that was behind that riddle was saying that a certain coin would hit $589 by the end of the year. And that created such a frenzy with certain, crypto holders, both for the community itself for that specific crypto, and then for people outside who just couldn't believe it. In the end, it kind of created this like hysteria of this coin of XRP, and I never really believed it. It just to go something from $1 to $589, that just sounded silly. But there were a lot of people who were really adamant about that, and within the end of the year it would hit that number, and I could see why, it seems like a cult. I can see why there's so many, XRP names that were created around that belief that it would hit a certain price target. And, it kind of hurt a lot of people in the end, but, that's the name of the game, unfortunately, is you just have to do your own research.
Do you think that's a scenario of somebody trying to influence the price? Like, he has a bunch, wants to cause a quick little run on it, get it to jump up, and then sell it all. I mean, in the same way that if Elon Musk tweets about a coin, right, it's suddenly, the whole Dogecoin thing from what was it, last year or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about it just went through the roof. Like, is this potentially somebody trying to do that as well?
It can feel like that. It definitely feels that way. There were so many people decoding the riddles and like connecting it to like geopolitics from that one simple photo, that it's possible that it could have been, a malicious actor behind that. But honestly, if it wasn't for that specific the way the way that entity kind of put things together and kind of wrote everything in code, and the way it was being decoded little by little, you could see how BRICS was involved. There was obviously the Federal Reserve, who was like, there was just like all these symbolisms behind that one riddle. So it's possible that he could have been a malicious actor just trying to build liquidity for, exit liquidity. But I never really saw it that way. I kind of just saw it as someone just having fun with, and just kind of putting things together. And then behind the scenes, you were seeing, the de-dollarization of Russia, and China. That's being more prominent now. That's popping up more now. But that was a thing. That was a work in progress for years already. So, the CBDCs, right? The central bank digital currencies. Like we kind of got all that from that one small riddle. And for me, the price point wasn't it wasn't like the driving force for me behind buying it or, purchasing or investing in it. It was really the idea of, this could really be something big that, all these, the US dollar wouldn't be used more as a weapon, rather than a global reserve currency. So yeah, it's very interesting. And I don't come from a background of finance like that.
No, I just picked up on a part that you said in this. So are you saying that this meme essentially that came up was actually hidden with like almost cryptographic kind of parts to it as well, that people were kind of like disseminating as well? That genuinely was hidden within it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds wild, but that
it seems a lot of effort. That's what I mean. Like, even if it was just for some fun, it seemed like a lot of effort to really kind of whatever message they were trying to get across.
And I found it entertaining. Like, I just found it entertaining. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, I kind of, I started with Bitcoin and Ethereum first, and then I appreciate that aspect of a community just having fun, someone just having fun, whether it be malicious or benevolent, we won't know, right? Just like the same situation with Satoshi, right? We don't really know she is, right?
Is this the Bitcoin founder that is
the Satoshi Nakamoto. Yeah, we don't really know the true intentions of what this technology brings. I mean, especially bringing an asset that has $1 trillion market cap for free, right? I mean, that's pretty impactful, right? And that certain countries are adopting it as a currency. So, to do all that for free, and it took, about 12, 13 years, I can see the merit behind this bearable guy, this character. So I just thought it was kind of fun. I just thought it was cool and just something just to kind of keep yourself busy while, prices are low and boring.
Along that subject, Kev and I are on the creative aspect of the spectrum. And so let's talk a little bit about how that crypto market has become a part of the digital asset and the birth of the NFTs. Explain this little phenomenon to us.
Awesome. Yeah. So NFTs, I think it's a pretty interesting concept.
So what do they stand for anyone that's viewing that's never heard of NFTs?
Non-fungible tokens. So what it is, it's pretty much what they're saying is that, how Bitcoin, you can't differentiate between another Bitcoin because there's no identifier. With non-fungible, it's just pretty much each token is identified with its own characteristics or traits. So there is some kind of difference between and fungible meaning, I guess, exchanging between two parties. And the reason why I think that's really important, it's really important because the blockchain, it's powered by blockchain, right? So what that is pretty much just a database, and it just keeps track of transactions that happens on a ledger, right? Sort of like how you have an accounting ledger, there's debits and credits. So if I send you an NFT, it credits your account and debits my account, the NFT. So that's double entry accounting, which was, created hundreds of years ago. This is a new phenomenon, which is just triple ledger accounting, right? There's a debit and credit for both parties. And then there's a third ledger that everyone can see. Right. So it's verified by not only two parties, but it can also be verified by an outside party that has nothing to do with the transaction. So it's triple ledger accounting. And the reason why that's important and how it can really sort of push NFT into mainstream, especially for artists, is that they're able to share their art on one specific platform that can be seen globally. Right. It can reach out to all 7.2 billion people on Earth, right? On this beautiful Earth. It can reach out. It doesn't specifically, because there's artists here in New York that'll probably just reach out to the major cities or, LA, Miami, what have you. But here still in the US, would maybe, some in Europe and stuff. But now, they're able to kind of broadcast their art to people in Africa, to people in the UK, like all, anyone who has access to a mobile phone. And I think that's pretty, that's impactful because, there has that, that cliche term, starving artist, right? Or hungry artist. Like this would actually help, eliminate that kind of that cliche, because you can literally sell your art to anyone in the world, and you can add benefits to incentivize people to hold your NFT or even to hold your art In so many ways, it's just, I think it's just really good. I think it's really, because I wasn't really into art. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't really like, before this, but then I see some of these artists coming up with these very intricate drawings and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, this is pretty interesting. I mean, just to hold and just to have, I think it's pretty cool, instead of the right click saving, like just physically, well, digitally owning the NFT.
I think as well is what's interesting is because a lot of time, especially specifically like the art world and anything that's quite kind of has its own niche anyway, is quite difficult to get into or, within certain circles, and all about accessibility if you must. Because for a lot of people like myself, I'd never even dream of getting, getting picked up kind of like a gallery or something, or, a proper bespoke gallery. Like New York is massive for art. There's tons of galleries, same as like London and Milan and all those places. But it's a very kind of, core knit, community of people, and you only really get in there if you happen to either just know somebody, or even if you try really hard to push in, you kind of, your work will get disregarded because it's not, it's not this guy, it's not or you're not dead and you've not been collecting the works for, the last 20 years or something. So it's interesting with crypto because I really, with NFTs, because I really enjoy the fact that it's you've got these two worlds that are actually quite different. Your digital assets. And I know people create digital drawings and things like that, but when we're talking about physical goods as well, is photography, actual paintings and things like that. The worlds were initially so far apart. And so now you've kind of like bringing together all these people across, a massive creative spectrum in any part, not just photographers and not people just creating images, in anything. Milo could be acting and create an NFT, and it's like filled with like all his best clips that's only unique to that buyer, So it's like you said, the possibilities in that seem absolutely endless as far as your mind can think. So I suppose it just means it's an easier way of getting people, obviously, more accessibility, more exposure, especially like say in creative fields, the difficult industries to kind of survive and to be successful in, even if you're really good. So, for example,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but also the fact that you're able to program the NFT itself to kind of collect royalties on the secondary market. I mean, that's amazing.
Like a sell-on fee, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, if I were to buy a photograph from you, that's just a one-time thing. Let's say before NFTs. Let's say I decided to sell it, for 5x the price. Well, all that goes to the seller, on the secondary market. It doesn't go to you at all, right? So you just make off from that first time sale. With the NFTs, you could set a 5%, 7% royalty, and through every sale on the secondary market, you're going to benefit from that and gain a passive income. As price of it goes up, right? You're going to make, you'll get paid accordingly through each sale, and I think that's amazing. I think that's something that a lot of artists would appreciate.
That does bring it in, because that is nice, like you say, because you'd only probably get, if you had like a pre-written agreement with a gallery or something, you might get one sell-on or something, but then after that, the next buyer is like, no, I'm not doing any, not doing any sell-ons or anything like that. It's literally, that's it. But yeah, to bring it back around then. So obviously you were to buy one of my NFT photography pieces. So how would a creative person essentially, especially someone who knows nothing about NFTs, how would they get involved with the whole process and actually creating one? So I know you touched on kind of like programming an NFT in. So yeah.
Yes. Well, to get started, get yourself involved on Twitter. I know that sounds kind of silly, but honestly, Twitter is like my go-to. I call it, it's crypto Twitter. That's what it's called, or NFT Twitter. Get yourself out there and start following other artists and kind of try to, because the thing is, some artists would love to support other artists, right? So it doesn't cost much. You don't have to necessarily buy their art to show support, but you can retweet, like, comment, tag a couple of friends that that's on Twitter, just to kind of help show that, hey, we're here to support you. And then, hopefully that's reciprocated. Now, I'm not saying you should do that on purpose, but it shows that, artists really, truly are, there to help each other. So get yourself involved in Twitter, following these artists. Second would be getting involved in their Discord channels. I mean, I know there's a lot of Discord channels out there, but if you're able to kind of reach out to these artists, you can, personally talk to them one-on-one through the chat, but also, you can even collaborate. So if it's not your first time, if it's, let's just say you're an up and coming artist, or you're a well-known artist locally, you can say, hey, listen, this is my work. This is my portfolio. I would love to collaborate with you. And then maybe, hopefully sometime in the future, we can set something up where we both of our work, we can combine them together. I think that's really awesome, because with that, not only are you getting your name out there, but of course you're getting the full backing of someone who's well known, or someone who has a small community that your community will be able to be combined with that community. So now you're just going to have one big community. It's all about community, really. It's all about the members and actually bringing them together. So you have crypto Twitter, Discord for your sources of information. I think also
what about
meetups.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what about that
right.
kind of networking? Yeah, with like people
right.
in person or on Zoom and such like.
100%. And meetups. I'm sure there's local meetups everywhere in every city. So, it doesn't hurt to just get your name out there, and then, possibly bring, your portfolio. I mean, pictures of it. You can bring pictures of it and show them through your phone, and just kind of link up, because through there you can meet developers. You're going to be able to meet programmers, coders. I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to kind of getting your name out there, but also getting started into NFTs. And there's platforms like OpenSea, there's LooksRare, Nifty Gateway. I think on these platforms, you can actually mint them. It allows you to mint NFTs right on their platform as well. So there's many different ways of doing it.
That doesn't involve any programming knowledge. It's just literally you kind of list it on there essentially.
Right, exactly. So for someone who's just starting, you can start out that route, right? And then again, get your face out there, network, because I mean, that's what blockchain is really all about. It's all about network activity and participants in the network, which brings the value, it raises the value of the protocol, the network. And that is going to allow you to, just get your feet wet and just get started. I mean, I feel like the NFT space is definitely a lot friendlier than the crypto, and it's not because, NFTs, I don't know. It's just, it's weird. It's a little wild, because with crypto, there's a lot of, enthusiasts for certain coins, right? And they're just closing off their community. And that's not really what it's about. It's about having an open community. And the NFT space, they understand that. They're just a little bit more pragmatic, right? Rather than being idealistic in their approach to this space. So yeah, those are like good examples to get into, and just kind of, you'll never know who you're going to meet. It's just, that's what's great about these meetups. You'll never know.
Do you think there's something for name recognition? Because when I read about it, you see a lot of the big selling stuff is by celebrities and that kind of stuff. So what about that person? You talked about it being global. So somebody that lives in South Africa that has no name recognition, like what's their chances of competing against the guy that did that digital monkey guy? I can't remember what the actual name is.
Yeah, the Bored Apes.
The Bored Ape stuff. Yeah, exactly.
What's great about this space is that there is no barrier to entry, but also everybody starts off at the same starting line, right? Everyone has to start off somewhere. So the rate of success all depends on how much you're willing to kind of, I guess, put your name out there. I mean, it all depends on how much you're promoting yourself, right? Promoting your work. It's not. I mean, what I would say is, it's not any different than you physically trying to put your work out there locally, but on the main stage where everyone has access to these platforms. It just makes it easier. It would make it a little easier in terms of having that kind of success. I understand that celebrities buy these apes and stuff like that. But the thing is, to be honest, they don't know any different, right? They're just buying whatever's the hype is, right? And that in my opinion, that does kind of ruin the space a little bit, because now you're picking winners, right? Through people's eyes that are not involved in this space. And everybody starts rushing, all the liquidity rushes to Bored Apes, or all the liquidity rushes to punks, which again, I'm not going to discount that from the project. I think it's a great project. But there's other projects out there that have, a real solid team, great artists, and a strong community. So, it's just the fact that celebrities get involved, and then all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, okay, I want that. I mean, we've seen plenty of derivatives of apes. I mean, how many times you've seen apes in different kind of like costumes and stuff like that. So, it all depends on the effort that you put in to try to get your name out there. And it's a lot, I feel like it's a lot easier than it is, if you were trying to promote it in a physical setting rather than the metaverse.
Yeah. So it's not quite a get rich quick scheme that like, oh, I just need to create something, throw it on there, and suddenly people will spend a ton of money for it. It does need to be something worth that people will want. And you do need to actually sell yourself along with it. Like, I'm buying something because this person has contributed to creating it.
Right. And, they call it a cash grab, and the thing is with artists, right? Some people would approach this space who are not really savvy into the space. They would just see it as, okay, I just need money, or I just want it, and I'll just cash out and then I'll just sell it, and that's it, which is fine. But if you need money, go to a platform that just, you don't need crypto, right? You could just go to a platform that you're able to sell, or maybe like a GoFundMe. Because I'm going to be honest, I was on Clubhouse the other day, and I heard an artist. She said she needed money, and she's like, to be quite honest, I just want to sell it just so I can fund my college. Noble cause. I think that's awesome. If you need that, there are other platforms, because the thing is, there's going to be a lot of people, especially in the NFT space, that are going to be not expecting a little bit more, but they're going to want you to kind of keep the liquidity in the network, in the community, rather than you taking it and then cashing it out and then, paying for whatever. So there's certain, I guess, rules to this, to this whole aspect. But I personally feel, 90% of NFT projects are going to go to zero, because we have too much speculation in the space. And the real ones, the real true artists with, a strong following, they're going to be the most successful ones. So it's going to be really hard now, but as projects start, quote unquote, failing or falling off, that's an actual artist's time to shine during the, quote unquote, bear market of NFTs. So right now, a lot of artists, well-known and very, talented artists, they will be overlooked for now until everything starts kind of, start slowing down, or the euphoria stage starts kind of dying down.
Yeah, I kind of see all that. It's like you say, there'll be certain people who are actually very talented in the field, but they'll get missed just because, like right. Sometimes, like you say, these factions of communities that come from celebrities just having the pure purchasing power and doing it for a fad, or they're people of influence, whether they're famous as a celebrity or business person or whatever. But talking of kind of like bringing communities together in the kind of right way as well, I'm going to kind of ramp us onto our kind of like our kind of main topic, where we do a public survey, and we have people come and put comments in. So we always do this near enough every show. We put out a question to the public and bring it to them, and also we'll all talk about it as well. So with this, and obviously because talking about communities and divisions and splits, and there's a similar link there. So this becomes a little bit more of a bit more of a serious question that I think everyone can kind of relate to. But it's the main question we put out to the people was, do you think there's been more or less racism since Black Lives Matters? And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring up some of those comments from the public, because we've had a good chunk. Let me just But yeah, the initial question to them was, do you think there's been more or less racism since Black Lives Matters? And we give them kind of like a multiple choice of definitely more, definitely less, a little more, a little less, no change, and other. And then we invited them to also comment upon their choices as well. And just for the record, so most of the people that are taking part, we had a good 55, 60, nearly 60 people kind of put in on there. So obviously it's not a huge model for the rest of the world to go by, but in terms of, you know, just this discussion, there's a good chunk of people that have put in, and most of them, I mean, I was a little surprised by this personally, because it wouldn't have been my choice. There was a good 48% said no change. And then we had a mix across the board then of other opinions on there. There was a good kind of 20-ish% of the definitely more, 31% of definitely more and a little more. And then no one said a little less. And then some said about 5% said definitely less. And the rest was made up of the others. But yeah, then the main one in there was most people opted for no change. And then what I'll do, before I bring it back to you guys, I'm just going to read a couple of those comments that people kind of clarified on their reasoning for. So we had, and these are all anonymous, so it's just,
right.
And what I will make clear before I read any comments on this survey and any other comments to the questions is anything that's said there isn't necessarily my opinion. It's just what someone else has literally put. It's a public survey. We give them the freedom to speak if they want to be. Sometimes some people are silly, most people are pretty sensible. But we won't get through all of the comments, but I'll reel some of them off. So first person said, I feel in some parts things may have improved, but in other areas there seems to be some form of regression via a backlash of sorts. Collectively as a world, I couldn't say for certain because I haven't had racism happen to myself. It would be best to ask people who it has happened to, regardless of their skin color or race. And then we've got, so someone said the white, in brackets, was the white reaction to it all was all lives matter. Yes, they do, but it's missing the point that Black people are not safe with the police who have institutional racism running through them, both here and in the US. Somebody else put very hard to quantify, so I have to fit no change by default. I'm going to run a little bit further down because there's quite a few there. Someone else put Black Lives Matter has done more harm than good, but I don't know if they mean that in a positive sense or a negative sense, if that makes
right.
So I don't know if they're saying it on the, like they agree with Black Lives Matters, but it's done more harm, or they don't and it's done more harm. So they've not expanded there. Someone said it seems to have helped raise awareness for some, but then incited others for some strange reason. So that kind of seems a little bit leading on from the other one, with a bit more clarification on what that meant. Someone said no matter how many protests or movements, etc., racism is embedded in your race. Prejudice has and always will exist. It's tribal. It's an interesting take. Not one I'd necessarily agree with, but this one's quite a long one, and I'll do this one and one more. I speak for the UK only, and I fear it has been quite successfully incorporated into culture wars by right-wingers who wish to perpetuate the status quo. Example, unequal opportunities for racial minorities or persons of colour and others. This is done by directing the resentments of neglected white sections of society towards other minorities. For example, EU migrants taking resources and lowering wages rather than swelling available tax revenues. And another example was ethnic minorities receiving special treatment at their expense. And then the example given there is that leads to people then saying things like white lives matter too, in inverted commas. So I'll do one more and then I'm going to bring it back to us, guys. And the last person on there said, I'm not sure whether whether it has, to be honest. What I do think has happened is Black Lives Matter has been used by both sides of our inept political system and their associated reactionaries. So yeah, I'm going to bring that back. Some interesting and varied comments there. I'm going to bring that back to you, Marvin. And yeah, do you think there has been more or less racism since Black Lives Matter movement? It's quite hard to say.
I kind of would have to agree with the, almost a no change. Because me personally, it's just the fact that there's no change. I'm not sure if I don't want to go over if that's a right or wrong answer, but I can probably come to an explanation as to why. Because I would feel that, it's just made a little bit more aware with people's actions. Some people, there was a time, years ago, 20, 30 years ago that, people would, I guess you could say people would say, certain things, and there would be almost no backlash, or there would be minimal backlash, right? Not to say that's right or wrong. What it is. It's that people were experiencing different environment 30, 40 years ago. Now, whether that's acceptable or not, of course, that's never acceptable. I just want to make that clear. It's just at that time, people weren't making it that much of a social. They weren't making it not want to say social issue, but they weren't putting it out or being blasted on stage as they're doing now, which I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, if you want to prevent something, right? If you want to kind of make a change, you would want to kind of make it known whenever someone makes a mistake. I mean, there's no problem with that. If you see someone in the street, and there's a crowd there, and someone decides to say a certain word or two, it wouldn't hurt to say, hey, listen, that's probably not the right thing to say, right? That's probably, that's as much as you can go forward without being physical or taking any kind of, physical act, because then you'd be wrong. But if there's more or less racism after the BLM or during the BLM, I would say it's just not as prominent anymore. I mean, it's kind of sad that we have to say things like this. We have to ask these questions because it shouldn't even exist, right? Something like this shouldn't exist. Moving forward, I think since the awareness is there and people are being held accountable, I think accountability is really important, right? To kind of make sure people are kind of set and set to a certain standard, right, where everyone can live, in a more, peaceful environment without having to face some kind of divisive attitude towards each other. So more or less no change, I would say, but definitely more aware, and that's going to moving forward, that would help. It just takes small steps. So hopefully, I think millennial and Gen Zs, I think we're kind of past that, to be honest with you. I think we're kind of, because, we are products of our environment, right? So, 30, 40 years ago, certain generations got away with it or whatever, what have you. That kind of trickled down to the later generations. And I think the generation before the millennials, they were a little bit more understanding because they were facing that kind of, segregation and prejudice right before us. So I guess, it's just, they instill their values in us. So hopefully, the majority, they've taken the acceptance of, the approach of being more open and more amicable towards people who are different than you. I don't see us having that kind of issue, maybe 20, 30 years down the line, once all these, once after Gen Zs they're just being more accepted, right? They're being more acceptable for who they are, what they are, race, color, religion, preferences, what have you. And that's just going to make it, I don't know, that should be a little bit more, it should make more impact, just keeping that awareness and accountability. So accountability is big for me, in any kind of aspect in life. If you're going to keep getting away with certain things, nobody's going to say it to you. It's just that you're just going to keep doing it, right? So yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay, yeah, I'll kind of pass it over to you, Milo. But I agree. There's parts of it that are kind of as further generations come down the line, it should change. But there will be there's that lingering generational issue that's been passed down to people as well. But yeah, sorry, Milo.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's hard for me to know for sure, as this handsome white face has shown.
So-called Prince Charming.
Exactly, hence Prince Charming. Jokes aside, though, I kind of in the boat as well. I don't think a lot has changed with the BLM music movement, especially when you see certain states trying to pass laws about like not teaching critical race theory and that type of stuff. So that's that, we're not racist, but we don't want to talk about racism or teach racism or acknowledge that it ever existed. Well, okay, ignoring it doesn't make it go away, kind of a thing. So it probably has brought it more to the front of people's thoughts. But the thing is, yeah, it's if a person's a racist one day, the odds on them waking up the next day and suddenly not being a racist are pretty thin. Maybe they have some magical conversation that happens that changes their mind, or they meet somebody that changes their mind. But the reality is, yeah, it's generational. It's going to take a lot of time. So exactly kind of what you were saying is that our generation isn't really going to have that much of an impact, but that next generation and that next generation. And it's true, right? You look 30, 40 years ago, we would have never elected a Barack Obama president. And, you look at celebrities, our hugest money-making celebrities are Will Smith and, people like that. So change is happening, and it happens slowly over time. Now, yeah, it's only been, a year or two a couple of years since the whole #BLM movement, but I think it will change. I assume it will. When I see younger generations, I think they're a lot more open-minded than my generation or before me. I think when I was in school, when I was in like high school or grade school, like you called somebody gay as a joke, right? Even if they weren't or were, that was like an insult. Oh, you fag, this kind of stuff. Now you would never do that. Now it's perfectly okay to walk down the hallways of your high school, being, gay, lesbian, whatever, and you're not insulted for it. So all of these progressive changes do happen. They just happen slowly. And I think this is one of them. I think it's just a slow progression to a better world, hopefully. Anyways, hopefully.
It's good that you touched on that about obviously like when you're at school, because obviously when you're at school, they're very, you're very of influence, you're highly influenced by the other things that your peers do and things like that, which obviously can sometimes lead to a spiral, but it's usually, it's usually in the kind of playful sense initially without realizing the impacts of what's being said. Like they say, oh, kids can say the cruelest things, but that's because they're not necessarily fully versed in the consequences of their actions, of what's being said. So even though they may have learned something from parents and they might be, 14, 15, 16, which is old enough to understand what you're saying, but it's like that wider and further impact, because initially it's like, oh, well, that's just a joke to me. I'm just fooling around. I'm being an idiot kind of thing, essentially, I'm not saying all kids are idiots.
Yeah.
But as they're at that age, you're still learning and developing and understanding things more widely. So which is probably why it's important as well that maybe like education is, but Milo reference to it, there's certain states in the US that don't want to teach about things that happened historically, in relation to racism. They want to be talking more about, spinning it onto like the patriotism side and like, this is why. And in some respects, that's kind of happened in the UK. When I was brought up, we weren't really taught about racism. We were taught about, which clearly happened, during like the whole slave trade era.
Right.
The British Empire was essentially built upon it only has got its economy today really because of how it was built, which was literally just going around, getting in a boat and going to another country and not having any regard for anyone that's there and going, right, we're going to take that, we're going to take those resources and we're going to take them back to the UK. And that is literally how the UK is established right today.
And
it's incredible,
I should add here, a lot of people don't realize that even though they banned slavery in the UK prior to the US, that didn't stop British companies from going to Africa, loading up boats and cruising over to the US and then selling the people on those boats.
Yeah, it categorically, it was like, oh yeah, this law's been passed, but we're going to just carry on doing what, doing what we want.
That's here in the UK. The US, that's a different country. So it's okay.
It's incredible, really. Like I say that, that there's a privilege there that that you're totally unaware of when you're growing up as a white person. You know that it's there because you can just do anything you want, essentially. And if you happen to be kind of middle class or higher, which is probably a problem that we have class systems, but if you're middle class or higher as a white person, then it's like, yeah, you can do what the hell you want. I mean, even if you're poor and you're essentially very working class, you've still got another step or two up ahead of a lot of people, purely because of the actions, really, historically, of these lords and sailors that decided to go, right, we're going to take these countries essentially and then claim them as our own, and literally have no regard for anyone that lives there. I know there are other examples across other areas of our species, which wasn't just white British people. There are other areas in kind of like Asia and things where you had wars that happened there and people just basically going in that weren't necessarily white people. But I'm just talking about the UK and what its impact on the world today, right from way back, by influeing a lot of countries to be like, yeah, we essentially colonized a bunch of countries, just for their own benefit and not for anyone else that actually was native of that country or was there when they arrived. It's like, I mean, and this is the thing I don't get is like people that are so kind of like patriotic. There's nothing wrong with patriotism in its simplicity, but the people that are very patriotic with that kind of underbelly of racism attached, you kind of pose the question to them. It's like, okay, so what would you do today if a bunch of people from another country, and it happened to be a different color skin or tone or whatever, you turned up in boats or aeroplanes or whatever, put a modern spin on it, and then they decided, right, we're taking a hold of this country. We've got no regard for you as a human. That's literally like, oh, we might use you as a utility or whatever. And we're gonna, that's it. You can't do anything about it. It's literally, if you want to try and do something about it, you'll die, or you'll get killed. If you're lucky, you'll end up working for that person as a slave in terrible conditions. So if you like I say, if you flip that question back and you ask those people that, I mean, very often they haven't really got an answer for that, because they know that it's a wrong thing. They know that it should never have happened. We can't help what happened in history. And this is the other side of the coin, is that the people who do want to understand and kind of bring about some form of change, people can kind of understand their history. And that's where Milo was talking about the kind of the teaching element, is that whole countries and governments have got to back, the education systems into kind of putting forward the learnings so that younger people can actually, even if they come from a racist household, for example, they can actually be educated via this, schooling system that tells them, this isn't right. And, you could easily turn it and flip it onto,
right.
Back on, but like flip it back onto yourself and ask yourself, would you want that to happen to you? And I'm pretty certain that the answer for most people would sensibly be, no, I would not want that to happen. I certainly would not have wanted anything like that to happen. And no one in a modern era would want anything like that to happen. So does anyone else want to have any input?
No,
let's move on. Let's do something fun, Kev.
Okay. Let's lighten it up for a little bit. We've gone on a deep topic for a second, so we're going to bring it back. So every show, Marvin, we have a little segment called Ask an American. And I know you're an American, and Milo's an American.
Yeah.
We've got kind of like an East Coast guy and a West Coast guy. So we've got, it's your chance to ask Milo a totally unscripted question. Okay. Ask an American. So
perfect.
Off you go.
Perfect. Okay. So I have one question. So trying to see if I could stump you on this one, but what is the most photographed object in Seattle?
Well, it's got to be the Space Needle. Like, there's nothing else that would be more photographed than that, would there?
Is that your
no? Is that not right? Is it one of the? Is it one of the? Is it the pig? Is it the little
the
Pike Street
Seattle
Market
boy
pig?
doesn't know
Well, it might not be, because the Pike Street Market is also a really popular tourist destination. And so people like to take a picture of the Pike Street Market sign.
Right.
And there's like a pig underneath there that everybody likes to sit on and then have their picture taken. So that could be it as well. So should I go with the Space Needle, or should I go with
a stick or twist?
the market? God, if I were traveling to Seattle, which would I take a picture of? Maybe it is the market. I'm going to go with the market.
Alrighty. Okay, so I don't know where this is, but obviously you're a Seattle native. So, okay, it is a rotating pink elephant car wash sign on Battery Street at Denny Way.
That no longer exists.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah, they tore it down last year.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that really surprises me that is the most photographed thing over the market or the Space Needle. Wow,
the Space Needle, yeah.
Yeah.
So they took that down. Okay,
they took it down. So that is, your trivia is outdated. Well, not outdated yet. But,
I didn't know. I was actually looking for it. I thought the elephant too. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was cool too. It was literally a pink elephant for this car wash, and it had been there forever, and just was this cool relic of old school Seattle. And they took it down. It doesn't exist. I think they're going to put it somewhere. Last I heard, they are going to put it. I don't know, maybe in a park somewhere, a museum or something like that. But the actual car wash is torn down.
Yeah, why did they take the elephant down?
I think they're tearing it down and putting a skyrise apartment complex in it, full of condos that nobody can actually afford.
Stick the
to
elephant on the top
own.
And have it rotating on top of the
something like that.
On top of the condos.
It's Amazon's fault. Amazon moved into Seattle and took over everything.
Just wrecked the place.
Okay, so now that we found out that the elephant was the most photographed thing in Seattle, let's move on to badly drawn bamboo. So, Martin, you have a badly drawn bamboo for us. Let's see.
I do.
I'm really interested in this.
It's pretty small, but simple. I got my inspiration from one of the videos that I was watching. But this is the guy.
Oh, wow.
That's badly drawn.
It's so bad. I didn't draw the arms because
I was going to say what's happened to my arms?
Just like a stick figure at that point.
Wait, I'm just.
It's like a bust. It's like a bust of bamboo.
I was trying to impersonate the drawings. So
I tried.
At least you have the beard. So that's good. Yeah. Last week's didn't have the beard. So that's all right.
Got the AirPods.
I had no beard in the last one.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah, got the ears in.
Nice.
I think you've got my beanie on there. So, that's usually a regular. No, I'm pretty impressed with that, actually. So, was it badly? Can I get this right? So, hold it up again, because I've got to rate these.
Sure. Of course. I'll take a screenshot of it. Let me just put this in here.
All right. So, let me see if I can get this right, because I always get my ratings wrong. Because I actually like that. There's good effort in there. I am going to go for. So it's not that bad, I don't think. So I'm going to rate that as a 3.5.
I'll take it.
10. Essentially, that's like getting 6.5 if we was rating it good. So that's a good rating. 3.5, which probably sits somewhere near the top.
I think that puts it in one of the top badly drawn bamboo category, actually. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The goal is closer to 1 with Kev's rating system.
Except often I rate it and then I get it totally switched the wrong way around, and I'm like, I don't even know my own game, So that's cool, Marvin.
All right, awesome.
All right, so are you going to turn that into an NFT?
Yes, I will. I actually have a good friend.
Are you going to do that?
Yeah, he's going to be able to
Really?
do it for me. He's going to do it on the XRPO once it goes live with the whole NFT proposal for the ledger. So I'm going to ask him as a favor if he could do that for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you hear that,
that's-
audience? You could own a badly drawn bamboo
As an NFT as well.
as an NFT. That's cool.
And it'll definitely go to charity. It'll go for a good cause.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's cool.
So,
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
should-
whether it be a couple of dollars or whatever, you know, it's.
It'd be awesome that we can get the first, because we've attempted to give away, you know, physical versions of badly
People
drawn
don't want it
bamboo,
for free.
But people,
Yeah.
people strangely don't want like random images drawn of me. I don't know why.
So
An
say that
NFT
again,
would be great.
Yeah. So say that again, Marvin. Where will that potentially be?
So this one, I have to see if I can, because I can't do it on OpenSea. I'd rather do it on XRPO. I guess when they come out with a platform with the actual proposal on the ledger, it was an XLS 20, I think. You know, you'll be able to get it. But I think you could still do it. It'll just be an IOU, and then you'll be able to get it in your wallet. That's
Okay.
When the proposal comes through.
Who's got that
But if
tech and stuff?
I
they'd
could
be able
send it to
claim.
you guys if you guys want it. I'll just send it to you guys over if you want. I can do that.
I'll definitly have them. But
I'll mint one and
Milo
I'll
doesn't
just,
there
seem
you
that
go.
keen.
yeah, I'll mint and I'll just send it to you. If you want the physical, I'll just give you the address. I'll just sign it
Awesome.
on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll quite happily. I'm going to make a montage of all the
Okay,
ones and then
perfect.
frame them,
Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I can definitely work that in.
If that gets minted, audience, follow Martin at Paper Street Projects on Twitter. You'll see him post about it there, and that's how to track it down. If you have a badly drawn bamboo that you'd like to share with us, you can send it to Kev on at @bamboo_creatives on Instagram. And I always say that as at bamboo. So there's no actual A in there. So if anyone just listens to this, they probably are sending stuff to the wrong place. So it's BMBOO_creatives.
We'll stick a graphic up just so that you can see how it's spelled. So yeah. So we've had a little bit of fun. We're going to kind of just drift back into the public survey, and we've got a couple more questions, which I'm going to do that. I'm going to do both questions at the same time, actually, this time. But no, I really loved your drawing. Actually, it's most of them that come in are pretty good. And yeah, no, you was pretty. You know, beforehand you were saying, no, I don't. You know, I'm not a drawer. I'm not an artist. Or anything.
Yeah.
It's got to be poor. And I was expecting a really, really bad one, just so I could actually say, yeah, no, that is a definitive badly drawn bamboo, but it's still a goodly drawn bamboo.
Thank you.
I'm yet to have a 10 out of 10 in the poorly drawn stakes. But yeah, I'm going to bring this back to our public survey. Yeah, so we've got two other questions there, and the final questions that were asked were leading on from the initial one was: should attitudes towards racism change further? And what can all people do to help bring about change? So kind of two very linked questions there. On the should attitudes towards racism change further, again, we gave them like some multiple choice and then allowed them to clarify if they wanted to. So we had, yes, I think they should. No, I don't think they should. Other, I don't know, and I hope attitudes can change. And I mean, I did expect this. So most of the people that responded in our kind of like 60 odd, near on 60 odd people, we actually had 64% of people said, yes, I think they should. The attitude should change. We had a mixed bag of one or two. So we had a fair few people, about 14% say, I hope attitudes can change. And then the rest was pretty much made up of an equal run of the no, I don't think they should, other, and I don't know. So I'm going to read a few comments on there. I'm sure, as we did in the first question, we had a varied bunch of responses. So let's have a look. One of the first ones there is: we have and are making great progress on racism. We are the most tolerant country in the world. But unfortunately, I don't know where that person is coming from. I'm going to hazard a guess, either the UK or the US, because most of my
Sounds about
followers
right.
either are UK or US, but they could have been from somewhere. Maybe could be an Aussie, could be someone in South Africa, possibly. But we'll assume, which is a bad thing to do, slippery slope to assume. So I'm not going to assume much, no, because I'll get loads of hate mail then. So then another person said, yes, they should, although it is hard to figure out where improvements are needed. We could say at home, but that probably isn't the best place if someone lives in a racist or underground racist. I think they mean kind of like kind of closet racism or whatever, where it's not necessarily visible, but it's subtle and particularly harder to identify. Lives in a racist or underground racist family. Maybe education is a good place to start, of course, backed by governments. That's strange because I said something like earlier, with a forward-thinking outlook rather than a regressive one. That's an interesting comment. So kind of like saying that education should be kind of like at the forefront of that change, but that it needs the government to kind of, fully back that, and obviously then, as people learn, get behind it as well. So then someone else, this is an interesting one actually. Someone put, I'm Irish and have suffered racism all my life, particularly in the 1970s when the IRA were bombing the UK. A lot of us know how Muslims feel today. Also, racism isn't just black on white. I think they mean white on black there, which I think Whoopi Goldberg foul of. The Indian caste system is shocking. The attitude of the Scottish to the English is as well. Once again, these aren't my comments, so this is just others. And as is the English towards the Polish or other Eastern European countries. It's also West Indians on Indian/Pakistani people. And then you have the momentum towards the Jewish as well. So their kind of rounding comment there is it's everywhere and in all nationalities and races. So they're talking about the wider impact of racism.
Yeah, they're talking xenophobia and all that. So it exists. Absolutely.
It's a good for them to highlight the different areas where other examples have happened as well, in where society has been marginalized by others. Someone says, I think the term needs to be more clearly defined and in line with some consensus beyond how it is defined on social media, which is not always representative as the world as a whole. As it stands, the discussion is monopolized by those whose views fall in line with the vocal majority on social media. So I can agree to that to some degree. It just depends which sides of social media at the time, because obviously you're all going to fall on a certain fence. But I think it's important that we recognize that social media isn't the only voice, although it is a large voice in today's world. There are a lot of people that have got opinion that can separate their social media from just an ongoing opinion or movement or whatever. So that's an interesting one. I'm going to read 2 or 3 more because there's a good chunk of responses. Someone said, unfortunately, they will never change. It's genetic, passed down from out of cave-dwelling ancestors.
Okay, I need to comment on that one. That's ridiculous. Okay, you put a little black child and a little white child in a room and they're going to play together. That is not genetic. All right. That is utterly ridiculous. Racism is taught.
It's an incredible, incredible comment. I don't agree with, and I don't think anyone else here agrees with. It does, although it's serious, it does make you laugh when you kind of read stuff like that, because you just think
that people actually think that.
Yeah. Anyway, I will move on. We will not spend too much on that one. So we've got another one, a good, really, really good comment here, actually, or appears to be. There's individuals of all backgrounds need to be respected for who they actually are. Wider racial/ethnic groups need to be celebrated for their distinctive contributions to our shared culture in Britain and abroad. It should be controversial that where the needs of certain groups are not currently being met, that investment is undertaken to increase their opportunities in society. I believe a more public acknowledgement to the deprivations of white sections of society could be very positive, where not presented divisively. School-age education would be highly effective, as would committed training in public servants, for example, the police, but also others. I think that was a really, really great comment, actually. I will read one more and I'll bring that back to you guys, and then we'll go on to question 3 in detail as well. Let's find one more. So someone says, I hope attitudes can change. I really do. The rallying against being woke, whatever that means, seems to be a big thing at the moment. I hope that people striving for equality or calling out injustice isn't seen as a bad thing. I think that was a good one to end that question. So yeah, I'll bounce that back to you guys. Yeah, essentially, should attitudes towards racism change further? So yeah, Marvin.
Yeah, I 100%. I mean, it should be changed. I mean, nobody wants to live in a world where everyone has to be scared of what the other person is going to say, right? I mean, where's the freedom in that, right? That's just something that the whole genetic thing that kind of blew my mind. I can't believe it was just. I'm sorry. I just have to.
I haven't even seen that comment yet as well.
I can't believe someone actually said something like that. Yeah. But yeah, definitely should change. And then how can people go about it? Just that's another thing, right? Just keeping people accountable, right? But keep people accountable across the board. Don't select a couple of people just because they don't align with your views and other things that doesn't have to do with the topic that you have an issue with, right? So if someone says that they're for a specific side, don't just kind of nitpick on one, because the thing is, you're sending mixed signals. That's the problem. If you're allowing one person to say something, but not allowing the other person to say something because of some political view or what have you, you're sending mixed signals to the community. You're sending, let's eradicate that by keeping it even across the board. I mean, there's certain examples that we had in the past 2 weeks where, there were videos of one person saying a specific word and another person saying the same word, but then one was being more amplified than the other. And, it's just like, well, from someone who's not, let's just say someone who doesn't have the critical thinking skills, they're just like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Like, why, you're kind of pushing some kind of, a narrative for one person. You're kind of looking at that person like, that person's bad. He's a bad actor, evil. But then the other person is just kind of letting it slide. So yes, it should change. I mean, that's a given. And, of course, I hope it changes too, because that's something, wishful thinking, right? Nothing is guaranteed. But also on top of that, just hold accountability even across the board. Don't pick and choose, So that's all I got to say on that, for sure.
Yeah. I am back you up on that. It should, and I agree. It should not be nitpicky as to who you hold accountable to some stuff and who you don't. And you're absolutely right. We see that happen all the time, where 2 people can say the same thing and one will be held liable for it and the other won't. So absolutely, police force, holding them liable if they, shoot somebody and it's unjustified. No, like, hey, I was a police officer. Somebody was running at me, so I shot them. Teach them to de-escalate the situation without the use of violence, as it should be, as it's done in most countries. Truthfully, right. That's a very US-based problem. So clearly that's something in the US system that allows them to get away with that.
Yeah, there's the shoot first, ask questions later policy.
Yeah, there's no. They don't get to the ask questions. It's just shoot first, and hey, I'm a cop. It's okay.
And I do recognize that from people I know that work in kind of like the armed forces as well. That the military is very similar in that respect as well, like actual communications wise.
Yeah.
And I'm not just like kind of going, oh yeah, America, you're the worst ones at it. But from people that have been in like UK forces, they've always said that the American forces are pretty poor at like trying to get to know a community that they're, if they're posted in, say, Afghanistan or whatever, they've just got no interest in actually communicating with the people that are there. Whereas, like, I can only speak for this person that's mentioned it to me. They're saying like the UK forces actually do kind of not necessarily befriend the communities there, but there are normal people living there that, they're not all bad people. I know that's a totally different kind of like edge of the sword, but when it relates to the communication part, if you've got someone who leaves the forces in the US, and then they become a police officer, that mindset is still, entrenched in that kind of that process, I suppose. So, yeah, not, the US isn't the only one that's bad at it, but it does kind of, like Milo said, there seems to be, for some reason, in the police forces, there's
it's an ingrained systematic
shoot first
issue,
and then nothing else, and then just get basically, get off because it was in self-defense, even though someone's running away from you at like, the fastest the legs can carry them. But totally. Yeah, and we'll put that. We'll go on to the question 3, which obviously linked well with the second question there, which is, so what can people do to help bring about change? So there was no options on this one. It was a totally open response. So all feedback there was just, so there was nothing really led there from the options available. So I'm going to bring up some of the comments and let's see what people have got. Let's hope that the person that commented on it being genetic maybe turned down the opportunity to have their own thoughts there. So I'm always open for free speech, but it's like anything. If you've got an opinion, you have to be open to people responding to that opinion as well, don't you? So, so here we go then. So someone says, I think, as similar to above, education is possibly a main area if supported. If we're older, then self-educating is a great start, like listening to people who have experienced racism and hearing their story. Only then can we really and truly be understanding of someone else's situation. Then following that up by backing those people when you hear racism and or see targeted abuse or targeted racism happening. Okay, so there's someone definitely from the UK that commented that the Black Lives Matter movement, based on incidents thousands of miles away on a different continent, will soon become forgotten as other such online campaigns have. For example, Je suis Charlie, which I think was the French so-called comic called Charlie Hebdo.
Charlie Hezbollah or something like that.
So where a lot of people, I am Charlie, basically in French, Je suis Charlie. So I think they're getting on the point of that we have these like kind of almost like glamorized things that obviously raise awareness, but also kind of then get quickly forgotten, almost like celebrity culture, I suppose. And they said the kneeling, this is their opinion, not mine. They're putting the kneeling bit before sports games in the UK is cringeworthy and should be abandoned. Okay, they started out with a fairly sensible comment and then kind of just went, I don't know, I'm indifferent to that because there's no, without us going down another rabbit hole of answers. For me personally, I just think, well, no one is hurting anyone by doing that, are they? There's not, it's the same as teams shaking hands at the start of a game or whatever,
Right.
If somebody wants to take a knee, let them take a knee. If someone wants to do 10 cartwheels for something else, let them. They're not actually hurting or infringing anyone else's,
right.
personal space. It's just it's just to say we support this in a very quick thing. But I kind of did get their initial point about them saying that kind of that sometimes these campaigns will get quickly forgotten. Although their second part was a bit of an insensitive comment, I think the first part was relatively sensible in that some of these campaigns will fade away, unfortunately, just because of there's like this, it's not the in thing or the cool thing, because some people like to treat these things as an accessory rather than actually something that is sustained. Well, let's get a couple more. Some people are scared of being branded racist if they don't immediately fall in line with the perceived consensus as represented by social media. By that, I mean that people are deterred from discussion if they fear they'll be called racist if they don't instantly agree with all lines of argument presented by, and then they say, for example, supporters of Black Lives Matters. I'll read a couple more because there are some really interesting comments. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, obviously, but some people have taken a good chunk of time to actually put their opinion across there. Let's go with, so speaking out is important, but is much easier said than done. Raising awareness via social media, protest where necessary, and being peaceful. As mentioned in earlier response, education is the key. There are lessons to be learned in history. It can't be that difficult to get across once everything is stripped away, that we are all just human beings. So that's ultimately, yeah, we are. That is all that matters, isn't it? We're just a species, and for some reason we decide we don't want to get on with each other. So let's go. Someone just put educate yourself. So these are all like reasons for how people can bring about change. Talking about how it makes people feel, what their world may look like on the receiving end of racism, sends a strong educational message to those that don't care or unaware, uneducated, etc. Think before we speak, thinking the history, think of the general society we live in. We are all able to make small change. And then they say, D&I is a huge part of what I do day to day. It makes me think a lot. It tells a lot about a person who deliberately chooses not to want to learn how to change. So that was a really interesting and balanced comment there. And it isn't the guy from before. So is support genetic studies until it is generally acknowledged that all humans are a single category or single species, and that arbitrarily picking color names to designate races simply trains people to think in a fashion that automatically categorizes people. That's optional, and it should be opted, of course, out of. So yeah, bring that back to you guys. Marvin, yeah, how do we bring about, or what can all people do to bring about change?
I mean, they for the most part, it's all about awareness and education. I mean that's what I got from the comments. Just trying to educate them and really, again, accountability. I mean, that's really what's important here. I mean, if you're just going to allow someone to just say whatever they want, of course, freedom of speech, that's their every right. But I mean, do it within boundaries where you're not hurting someone, emotionally, physically. I mean, as long as you're not hurting or infringing on someone else's rights to live the way they want to live. I mean, it should be so, right? It should be the fact that you just gotta watch what you're saying. And if you're not, you're going to be held accountable. How? Well, that kind of falls in line with, it's a topic, where we're heading into, it's behavioral, we're heading into almost like a behavioral economics. I know this is kind of shifting a little bit, but at some point we're going to be surveilled of what we say, right? We're going to be, whether it be through social media, through our phones, anything that involves communications. I mean, we're seeing it now, right? We're all kind of just being looked, and we're being surveilled at that point where our social media is kind of being run through, any kind of content. I mean, you have, Twitter spaces that have closed captions, right? So they know exactly what we're saying. It's kind of, it kind of falls in line with, okay, yeah, maybe we should be educated and being a little bit more, more conscious of what we're saying, which will help being, stop the racism and of course all this negativity. But also, it also kind of brings up the other side too, where it's just like, okay, well, at a certain point, it's going to progress into something where it's just going to be literally every aspect of our lives is going to be surveilled, right? That's going to help bring accountability. That's going to help bring more awareness of what people should and shouldn't say. But then there's a fine line of like, okay, at what point where can they take it further, right? Can they tweak the algorithms where it's just like, okay, maybe they say something against the government, or maybe they say something against a political view or a certain belief. It's not. I mean, listen, it's of course it's for social justice, and I'm 100% for it. But it's just like, where's the line in the sand where they can just kind of blur it out and say, okay, well, they said something about this political party, you know what I'm saying, and so on and so forth. I think it's a fine line between that. But again, that's just kind of just moving. That's just kind of shifting forward. But for now, I think just being held accountable and kind of, just send a little reminder to people, right? Hey, listen, just be careful, what you're saying and stuff like that. Because at a certain point, that's just going to be all done automatically. It's just going to be automated. And yeah, that's going to help. It's definitely going to help. And, education, right? And Milo brought up a good point, right? It starts off with, it's generational, right? So, I mean, if we can't do it with our generation, because clearly you could see that, let's try to make sure we mold the generation moving forward, or the generations moving forward, to kind of help mitigate this kind of this attitude, or this kind of these thoughts, right? These kind of just the kind of negativity that people put in their heads. So again, moving forward, I mean, we could try to do as much as we can, but try to help mitigate all that. I think it starts with the younger generations. So I think that's already starting. We just would have to reinforce that.
Yep, absolutely. Keep it moving in the right direction, and education and holding people liable. It's an interesting. I just really want to comment on what you mentioned about like people tracking what you're saying and that kind of stuff, because it's totally true where, that happens, and you can be held liable for, we've seen it, something you tweeted like 10 years ago. I was listening to an interview with the former head of the ACLU, and he was talking about that because they're all about free speech, whether you agree with it or not. Right. And he was asked about like people that they've defended. And he said a large majority of the time, the people we've defended, we haven't agreed with. Like, they've defended white supremacists that they clearly don't agree with their opinions, but they agree with their right to say what they think. And it is an interesting aspect of culture now where you are being held liable for saying something.
Yeah,
sure.
I think touching on that very small, because I think we, like you talking about people getting in trouble for things that they've said historically. Yeah, I was just going to kind of not really bring up an example of that, but it is I think we do, and I think you also mentioned it a little bit earlier on, Marvin, where it's like, yeah, okay, people can make mistakes, and they can say something wrong, and I think obviously it's important that they learn from something. If clearly if they say something that, regardless of what that is, but obviously in relation to this topic, if they say something racist and they then don't learn from it, and it continues, of course, yeah, they're not necessarily like Milo said. If someone says something racist one day, you're not going to wake up the next day and necessarily change their behavior. But if someone says something that's a genuine mistake, or it's like a faux pas kind of thing, we live as well in a society where we're not allowing people the chance to apologize sometimes as well. Like, especially in the whole kind of social media, and we know what Twitter is like for taking off. Somebody says something, and yeah, they say something wrong, and absolutely, totally wrong. Shouldn't have said it. But when do they get a chance to say, okay, I genuinely apologize for that? Because everyone's then kind of like cancelled that person, or career's over, or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't be punished for what they've said, but people should be allowed to kind of also apologize and learn. Because if you don't allow them, all you do, you kind of create that division even further, I think.
Right.
Because if you don't give the opportunity for someone to say, if the pattern continues, clearly, yeah, they're not going to change. But we have to allow people the initial, in anything as well. This is, if I go on Twitter and say something tomorrow and it offends someone, okay, it's offended somebody. Am I going to, go and like harass them tomorrow and say something again to them?
Right.
And are they going to be over it kind of the next day and be like, okay, as long as I've learned from that moment that I've said something. If I don't, and I continue to, repeat those things, then yeah, sure, prosecute me, punish me for what I've done. But we have to allow someone to make an apology, public or privately, to the people that it may have impacted and affected, and only that way you can also kind of grow from there as well, I believe. And that'll be like kind of my.
All right, let's bring it down a notch. Marvin, we've chatted about the badly drawn bamboo NFT that is going to be your most prized possession. But until that happens, currently, what if you just had one item that you could keep, one possession in the world with you, what would that one item be?
Glad you asked. So all day, I was just thinking, I'm like, oh, if I had to just bring one item with me, what would it be? And I couldn't come up with an answer. But so on my chair, screw fell off, right? And literally this was like right before coming on. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I was like, I don't have a screw. I don't have anything. And I'm just like, okay, now I have my item. It would be a Swiss Army knife. Because and I know that's cheating. I know that's kind of cheating a little bit.
Yeah, you got 30 things.
Right. Right. And I know that's kind of cheating, but I mean, you literally can survive with just mini scissors, mini pliers. I mean, you can have 30 in one. And I know that's kind of cheating a little bit, but I'm literally just I'm putting the screw back on. And I'm just like, I really wish I had something small I could just put in my pocket and just kind of bring with me at all times. And I'm just like, I got my answer, Swiss Army knife. So I would bring a Swiss Army knife with me. That would be my one item. That would be it right there.
MacGyver has taught us that is the most important item that any person could carry on them. I mean, you could use it to disarm bombs, to fix stuff. It's universally amazing.
And I think was it Crocodile Dundee who had a knife? So I mean, he just had a knife, but yeah. I thought he was going to say like your nano ledger or whatever with all your assets kind of loaded on and just like, yeah, okay, I've got this, I'm off.
Right. And it depends on the situation too, right? If you told me that I'd be like living on an island or, like a really intense situation like that, then, nano wouldn't get me anything, right? I mean, my wealth would be measured in what in whatever goods I can produce, and at that point, if I have $1 million and whatever, it's not really going to help me. But yes, that would be my one thing for sure. Swiss Army knife.
It's totally blown everyone else's answers out of the water now because they've all just said like one thing, like soccer ball or pen or a mattress or whatever, and it's like, there you go. I'm going to take with me like a full toolbox with everything. Just stuff in. Oh, it's just a toolbox. It's just one thing. It's like, but no, cracking answer. I love it almost as much as I love cheese. And on this show, we also have another question for you, which is. Talking of cheese, Marvin, what is your favorite cheese? It's our most important question on Rip It Up. So yeah, what is one of your favorite cheeses?
Munster cheese.
Yeah, I do not know what Munster cheese is.
Oh really?
Milo, do you know what Munster cheese is?
Do they not have Munster in the UK?
I don't know. I don't think so. What have you bought it? Have you managed to get
Munster.
It?
Yeah,
have you got it? Have you bought it in the UK?
Feel like I have because it's soft, right? It's like very strong. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can find it in. There's a market in central London that you can get different cheeses at. I think you can get it there. I'm not a fan of Munster, but my wife is. She likes the like stinky, strong cheeses. So she is definitely a fan of that one.
And it's really stretchy when it melts. So it kind of has like almost like a mozzarella kind of like. Like texture, I guess, when it's heated up.
Is it kind of a bit like brie as well then? So it's
kind of
like melty, stringy, kind of gooey,
texture,
yummy.
But the taste is very different, I would say.
Yeah,
right. Okay,
definitely. I'm not a big fan of brie. I'll definitely say that.
Yeah. So what's the taste like? What's Munster? Because this is like just opened my eye. I'd never heard of it before in my life. So
it almost has like a salty taste to it, almost like a savory taste to it. It doesn't really have much of a taste, but it's. What do you think, Milo?
I'm trying to think how I would describe it as well. Like, yeah, it's a very like kind of on
Milo's
the
just thinking
back
about
of your tongue, kind of strong taste.
Right.
Is the way. Yeah, That's the way I would think of it. So, all right, cheese. Let's wrap this show up, guys. Before we finish out, of course, Marvin, if people want to track you down, where would they find you? Social media, web, whatever. What do you want to plug?
Okay. Awesome. So on Twitter, it's Paper ST Projects. That's pretty much my name throughout most of my social media, and you can find me a lot on Clubhouse. Same name, Paper ST Projects. I do 2 shows a week. We'll have 2 other co-hosts, and then we talk about financial literacy, crypto literacy, and anything in between. So yeah, those are the 2 main platforms you'll find me on.
All right, great.
And what about any kind of like in-person stuff? Do you do any kind of meet? Because you spoke about meetups.
Oh yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for reminding. So we do XRP NYC meetups. We have it every 2 months. This one coming should be at some point in March, going into April, but I'll be retweeting that out as much as I could. Come on out. We have food and drinks. We do serve, and we kind of just go over all the latest things happening on the XRP ledger, and then anything in between. Anybody want to have conversations? Any conversations, any topics they want to go over. So it's kind of cool. It's fun. It's really cool.
So, yeah, I mean, I've got to get myself out to one. I'm sure people run similar things in the UK, but I don't know why. The US ones just always seem so much more effort put into them, and just seem like everyone's really, really invested in one. Yeah, I've definitely gonna get myself. When Milo flies back to Seattle, I'm gonna have to jump in his suitcase or something and just
buy some cheese.
Buy some cheese. Drop me off in NYC, and then
take you to the Pike Place Market, and you can hit the cheese stands.
Yeah, I can take a photo of the original location of where the pink elephant was. But it's no longer
there you go.
Just be like, this is where it was. So yeah.
Right.
Tour of the northern states of the US. I know that's awesome. So yeah, thanks Marvin for joining us. As always, thanks to the public for their comments and input, and obviously anyone that's kind of been listening on Instagram Live to our unedited stream. Thank you everyone for helping us to rip it up again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
No, that's awesome. Thanks, Marvin. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Hey, Kev, what's coming up next on Rip It Up?
Yeah, Milo, next time on Rip It Up, we've got Rod Matsui's coming back, and he's going to do a deep dive show with us. So we're going to go and talk Loch Ness Monsters, Sasquatches, Bigfoots, more of the films that he's been involved in. I'm sure it's going to be an absolute fantastic show. The original one was, and Rod's a great guy. I'm sure we'll find out much more about him.